up? We're going to be talking about John Bonham on my Greatest Drummers series. You know, I wanted to do a list. I was thinking the other day, hey, how many drummers have influenced me and who do I really like? And I started writing these names down or putting them in my phone. And, you know, because I teach a lot and I move around a lot, so I actually use the phone for notes. And this list became huge. It's almost at 100. And I'm going to try to make as many videos about this as possible, short. So how do you do a short video about John Bonham? Well, I'll just tell you what I am inspired by and have been influenced by, and how he played the drums. You know, Narada Michael Walton said that the drummer is really the root of the band. You know, if you take average musicians that are so-so and you have a great drummer, that band is going to be smoking hot. Now, if you take a average drummer with great musicians, they're not really going to sound as good as they could sound. And I was like, yeah, the drummer is the heartbeat of the band. I believe that's what he said. So Bonham passed away in 1980, and I was getting ready to be 10 in October of that year. He passed in September, I think. And it was really sad because I used to get these, my mother used to get me these Encyclopedia Britannica, well, the volume set, and then the science books, and then the yearbooks. It's like, you know, so you can see why I was a nerd from the beginning. And there were obituaries in every yearbook of notable people. And I remember reading and seeing John Bonzo Bonham, and I was like, who's that? And I read it, and I was like, oh, wow, that's the cat. But I really didn't make the connection with him and Zeppelin because I was a kid, and I was like just getting out of Kiss and into Hendrix and stuff. So Zeppelin kind of slowly creeped up on me. And by the time I was in high school, you know, of course, I was very familiar with the stuff. I didn't realize that my playing I was being influenced by Bonham. And I didn't really know until recently when I really started checking out my playing. So I'd like to share with you just a few things. And I may have to split this video in two because for the last 5 days, I have been checking out Zeppelin really heavy. And I found myself writing a thesis on 26 tunes. What I think is unique and legendary about Bonham's playing in these songs. So if you go to thericklessons.com and you can see on the blog where I talk about this. Let's start yapping. Okay, so anyway, I did a performance of Immigrant song, Out on the Tiles, Over the Hills and Far Away, the Ocean, and Full in the Rain. Now, we could talk about a lot more stuff. We could talk about Moby Dick. We could talk about all this stuff. But let's just get this going because there's a lot of other drummers to get to, and let's touch base on John Bonham. Immigrant song. Why did I pick that one? Because it just drives... It just has it's very simple, you know, for one, but the groove is undeniable, you know. You know, when that snare drum snaps with the guitar, boom, that grooves so hard. I mean, it just takes you away right there. And that's one thing I heard that one guy was analyzing Bonham, and he said, you know, Bonham always played with the guitar more than the bass. Usually the bass and the drums lock, but he was locking with guitar parts and playing those guitar parts. And that's one of the things that I do. Now, I can't say I got that from Bonham specifically, but that's one thing I want to point out in Bonham's playing. If you really check out all these tunes, and some of his drum fills and accents are accenting the music. So he wasn't just keeping time, but then he gives you the sense of nothing but keeping time just because of that heavy pocket he lays. The heavy pocket and a little bit of ghost notes that are happening with his left hand. Now, I hold the stick like this. Bonham holds it like this. So that's the only difference, but it's kind of the, you know, ghost note, ghost note, ghost note, ghost note. That's what because he could have played it like this. That's cool too, and that's probably, excuse me, that's cool too, but that's probably the way it would be done today by today's clean ass standards. But good for us. Cats were just laying down the vibes on record back then. So there's proof it can happen. But, you know. There's no toms in this song. And then the turnaround. Man, it's like he's a cement mixer on that one, okay? Undeniable. I mean, what can you say? So when you got a pocket like that happening in your life at a young age, that's going to stay with you for the rest of your life. It's just going to do that, you know? Let's move on. Out on the Tiles. This tune, from the first time I heard it, I was just like, okay. It was just so loose, you know, and then these drags. Those drags on the they slow. It's like they slow it down on purpose, but then pull the tempo slightly back up. That's badass. I'd never heard anything. Well, I heard some stuff like that, you know, in jazz music and creative music. Of course, tempos change, and then let's not even talk about the band that I play in. We're going to that all day. But for rock music to do something, to do a slight shift and then go back, again, that's breaking the rules. It's great. It wasn't so straight ahead. Or this is where we hear his that broken triplet kick thing. That's one of his classic signature licks, you know. I mean, that's classic Bonham. It's just classic. It's like the Star Spangled Banner and Hendrix. These certain things, and rock and roll and drumming and Zeppelin, all that together. these are the signatures of Bonham that make him so great. Over the hills and far away. Oh, that's like an R&B cut to me. It just has this rock guitar in it, but that's what R&B is, right? There's so much influence of black music with Led Zeppelin. I mean, we all have heard about it in the lawsuit with Willie Dixon. Willie Dixon knew my father. You know, there's a picture of Willie Dixon sitting in the chair in my father's living room. And I'm like, man, this is the real father of rock and roll right here. He wrote for Chuck Berry. He wrote for, I think he wrote for Chuck. He wrote for Muddy Waters. He wrote a lot of hits for people. So, and, you know, but I don't want to get into all that. Y'all can look that stuff up in litigation history because Willie Dixon, he got paid and he should have. But back to Bonham. This is an R&B tune, and you could tell Bonham was listening to a lot of R&B, a lot of Motown. He was listening to the blues. He was listening to international music. I'll get into that a little later. But, you know, and it was really cool when he goes, something like that. Something like that. And these things stick with me, and I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. I do a lot of things that are Bonham-like in my playing. So that's why this cat is number one, the first video I'm doing in the Greatest Drummer series. I mean, you got to mention Bonham, right? So that's the pocket of Over the Hills and Far Away is, you know. And I want to say this isn't really like a Bonham kit, but it works for this music or to demonstrate some Bonham-like things because, you know, I'm in a big 2,000 square foot room, and the way that this carries, especially through the microphone, you hear the room, it kind of gives me like some Bonham chills, right? Yeah, so that's why I chose that song, because of the groove and the way Bonham. I noticed with a lot of Led Zeppelin, there are a lot of tunes that have long intros, and the drums don't come in until maybe 3 minutes into the song. You know, you got Stairway to Heaven's like that, this song. There's a bunch of tunes where, and you can see that in my long thesis. I wrote about 26 of these songs. You know, Good Times, Bad Times, Babe, I'm Gonna Leave You, Communication Breakdown, Whole Lot of Love, Bring It On Home, Thank You, Heartbreaker. I just went in order with these songs, album by album. of what I believe are significant moments in John Bonham's playing. So you want to check that blog out at ricklessons.com. All right, so, and then we have the ocean, come on. We got full already, and now we're steady, and then they went, well, they who? 1, 2, 3, 4. Man, that it's not too busy. This groove is so slick, it kind of sounds busier than it is. I've listened to that song so many times without analyzing it, just as a listener, and it gets by me. So when I was like, wow, I'm going to do my version of that, it's probably going to be a little busy there, or I'm going to discover something that I didn't notice before. And the thing is, nothing was there. It was just really simple. On that turnaround, I expected more ghost notes or something, but it was just that's it, just hi-hats. So I was like, wow. Look, I want to jump back, I just noticed, to the ocean on my pad here. I wrote these fills out because when I did the version of the ocean, I kind of wanted to stick to what he was doing because I want to point to the fact that Bonham was full of form, okay? He wasn't just keeping time. He was really full of form. That cat was a measuring stick. And he stuck to these parts, and you could hear the respect and love and connection that he had with each song, and that was what was so fun about exploring John Bonham from Sean Rickman's perspective. I'm like, wow, I could sit here and do this for another 3 weeks, but, I have a life. I got to do things. Anyway, I noticed some things in the ocean where he's doing, in the bar of 7/8, when he does the drum fills, the intro, he keeps simple, Now right here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's the first one, and then the second one goes, right? And then the next one goes, or he just acts it, pop, 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 it's the same phrase. And then the last one is, so he keeps a form happening on that bar of 7 with the same phrase, but he accents it differently. It's so hip because many drummers today might make that more technical than need be. So Bonham was a genius at these parts where he's playing the drums and opening up, but also keeping the form that way too, if you know what I mean. So I wanted to share that, and because I noticed when I charted this stuff out, some of the fills, I was like, oh, wow, look at this. He really sticks to some things. again, when you have a pocket like that and a sound, there's a lot of things going on with Bonham. And this brings up a time when I was doing an album with Andy Johns, producer Andy Johns. He's Glenn Johns' brother. Andy was doing Cinderella at the time. He was Van Halen, the live album. He had so many crazy stories. He was the assistant engineer on Are You Experienced sessions with Hendrix. He had a lot to say about that. I'm going to talk about that maybe in the Mitch Mitchell part. So this is why you got to check me out on my videos, because I've met some of these people, and I could tell you some undisclosed information. Got to be a little careful with that. I don't want to put anybody out there. But anyway, I was with Sean Lane, guitarist Sean Lane, and we were doing a single or two singles in California back in '93. And Andy was there when they recorded When the Levee Breaks. And I swear this dude said, I don't like to swear, he said, the Levee Breaks was recorded with one microphone. And I was like, nah, dude's just putting this on. Because Andy was a little bit of a jokester and prankster, but he seemed very, very serious. And he's not with us today. But and neither is Sean Lane. I'm going to hit up my friend Barry Bays and make sure I heard that right. But I was there when he said it. We were in the studio, and I was like, now how many people get to hear that from the horse's mouth? You know what I'm saying? So that's, hey, some of you may put in the comments down below, what, hey, talk about it. Help me out. But that's what Andy Johns said. When the Levee Breaks was recorded with one microphone. See, learn something new every day. Anyway, and that's badass. I mean, look, hey, it was all about getting the distance with the microphone, and I never asked him what microphone it was. I just heard that, and I was like, right? Okay, cool. So let's check out before I keep moving on, the ocean, the doo-wop part at the end. Classic rock again. I mean, where the song shifts from this hard R&B pocket to straight doo-wop. It's kind of like a nod to that era. These guys were into country music, like mountain music, R&B. It's just R&B. When you really check out Led Zeppelin and John Bonham's playing, it's super R&B. It's just their way of doing it. Fool in the Rain, Now, that shuffle, the Bernard Purdie shuffle, as many people will refer to, is happening here. But I want to tell you how technically difficult it is to play this tune. You got to... The ghost notes are blazing hot. It makes it happen. Now, when I learned this tune, I didn't learn it note for note, but I learned the major grooves and the shifts. When I was coming out of that section into the... I had difficulty lining up. I was like, does he keep the same bass drum throughout? Yes. So I had difficulty lining that up with the cymbal. But the kick drum hits some of those cymbal hits. So those right there. So you want to be aware of that. And then there's the hi-hat. A lot of drummers do not use this thing. This disappears when drum fills happen or when the ride happens. And I'm like, yo, Bonham was a hat user. He had a lot of independence with his legs, too. Dennis Chambers calls the legs the nightmare. I'll get into that later, but yeah. And you got to come out of this triplet fill. I mean, I was adding a couple things, but that is very special, this song, for drums and just the feel of the song. Now, they go into the section at the end, and it kind of reminds me of a little calypso, but more samba of Brazil, because he's playing. And maybe they did it that way for the sake of doing a rock album, to keep the beat really straight. But I couldn't help but develop this into this. Samba, but I think there's some marimba in it, or something like that. But Bonham is playing it pretty straight, right? And I can't help but go. But I mean, you can see how difficult it is to do that at that tempo. I mean, they weren't going for the authentic Brazilian beat, and I could be wrong. But I just couldn't help but hear samba there and a little bit of calypso on top. So that really makes Full in the Rain special. different than any other drummer who's playing pop music and has to know these sections. But, you know, when we're looking at a band like Zeppelin, where they were free to have, well, Jimmy Page and those guys were having that type of creative freedom, they still had some universal laws to their music. The intros, the orchestration, bringing in strings. These are wonderful things about Led Zeppelin. And it was great to have John Bonham as the drummer. He was a pioneer, more depth than a lot of people would dare look into because of his rock star status. But he just happened to be a rock star, and it was an incredible loss. Imagine if Bonham were here right now. We could sit there, and then there's the drums. The big, I'll end it on this. His drums. This cat was playing a 24 bass drum, right? Or maybe sometimes a 26. I haven't really done my homework on that, but I noticed that he played like a marching snare drum. So if you want to get that big sound, there's a lot of drums that are coming out where they're bigger, wider, but then they're longer. So when they're longer, I find that gives too much mid-range, and it kind of makes it boxy. It may look like a cool bitchin' drum to have. It's all big, looks like a cannon, but it's like gawk, gawk, gawk. And so when they're shorter but wider circumference, you get much more of a boom, a real solid, low thud, but it has a nice curve on the mids. So you want to go short and wide, like Bonham, if you want that sound. I mean, you can get these drums and not sound like him. So it's not just about the drums. It's about his hands and how he take two people with sticks and the way that their wrists and everything, the whole energy that comes out of that body into that stick makes it sound the way it's going to sound with that person. So anyway, those are my words and things that I admire about the great John Bonham. Please visit me at thericklessons.com. Pop on over to the blog and subscribe and join my mailing list. It's drums all day. I'm going to tell you everything I know. All right, we'll see you next time for the Greatest Drummers series.